honor of Valentine's weekend and this idea of love and all of that, I thought I would share my relationship journey and how I came to understand love as it is in my life now. And now that's a whole thing. I mean, I could go on for days and days. So I'll try to be concise as much as possible. So for starters, I am a person that struggles with relationship addictions, which is an offshoot of codependency. And I am also a person that is polyamorous. And how I realized all of these things is a big journey, which I'm still on because it's lifelong. Recovery is lifelong. Life is discovering oneself is lifelong, but it's probably the best thing you can ever do is be on this journey towards self-realization. I don't know if that's the right word. So I want to start out by talking about the idea of what is relationship addiction. So I'm going to go over to Google. I know I'm not supposed to use that, but whatever. And I'm going to type in, just because nice and quick, just kind of a quick meeting. Relationship addiction. Can you be addicted to relationship addiction? Relationship addiction is characterized by cravings and a loss of control when it comes to being in a relationship with a specific person. Like love addicts, people with relationship addiction seek feelings of euphoria and gain intense chemical reactions and releases while in pursuit or in a relationship. Okay? Addictive relationships can be characterized by excessive attention that is given to the partner, while an inadequate amount is given to the self. These relationships are addictive in the sense that there is a compelling need to connect with and remain connected with a person, with a particular person. And just for fun, I'm going to look up love addiction. Love addiction creates challenges in relationships and can play itself out in a variety of unhealthy behaviors. So I'm looking for the term okay, the codependent person keeps working to try and please their partner to ensure they get the love they crave. It becomes a self-perpetuating habit with obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. That's why codependency is also sometimes called relationship addiction or love addiction. So I'm thinking that basically relationship addiction and love addiction are the same thing. I'm gonna look up codependency and give a definition of that. Codependency is a learned behavior that can be passed down from one generation to another. Agreed. It is also known as relationship addiction because people with codependency often form or maintain relationships that are one-sided, emotionally destructive, or abusive. Okay, so I'm back. Well, you already were seeing me, but I was looking at my Google. So with that, I kind of want to give a rundown of how that, because I wasn't really born that way, but it was something that I developed through my life experiences. And like most people in about junior high, maybe 6th grade, you start to go through your hormonal changes and puberty, and you start to feel your attraction towards, I would say, another person. I don't want to say, for me, it was the opposite sex, but there are people that, either are same sex or, now it's like pansexual. So you feel this maybe romantic and or sexual attraction to another person. And so that's when it began. And you know how when you're a young person, it's so exciting. It's like going on that first date or going to the dance and hopefully you see your crush and you don't know what you're going to say, but you just are so enamored by them. And that's kind of normal to have that sort of the first crush, in middle school, junior high age, that first puberty, to have those feelings of infatuation. And that's all you really know about love when you're that young. And I'm talking right now about romantic love. But it should, as you mature throughout high school, middle school, whatever, college, all the way up, it should deepen as you grow and learn. Relationships take work. And for me, throughout my life, once relationships got to a place where they were more intense, I would kind of space out because I didn't want to get that close to someone. And then I would look for my next fix. Well, this relationship is growing stale, and instead of working on that relationship and trying to discover a new phase of love, because love is multifaceted and it deepens, and that's a new phase. Instead of like wanting to work on that, it was too hard because I'd also have to look at myself, and I would look for the next fix, the next person to crush on. And I want to say now that since the beginning of when I first started having attractions to people in that way, there was always at least 2 people that I crushed on at one point or wanted to be in a relationship with romantically. Okay, and that is anyways, so back on the thing. So I always had that, and it's a distraction from self. It's I as I got older and older into life and got, on my own and had to care for myself and be an adult and work and all that stuff, I started not taking care of myself when I was with someone romantically, because I was looking for that fix. I was looking for that distraction from self. And so early on, it was like a drug, and it felt so good, and I felt so, like, it was a drug. It was exactly like the quote said, or the definition said. It just gave me that sense of euphoria, how an infatuation feels. And so instead of working on the relationship I was in, or even just looking at it and working through it, I would just go towards that infatuation, that euphoria, and go on and on with that. And I think a lot of that was inspired by, the Hollywood, Disney, even going back to, like, you would say Jane Austen or the Bronte sisters. There was that idealism of love being that there was another person that was your other and that could save you and make you feel whole. So I was always looking for that. And then, of course, always getting my heart broken because a person can't be your savior, or can't, something external can't necessarily be your savior, be the one that makes you whole. This led into going away to college and, falling into the trap of being a person that is empathic, that is an empath, and that is a relationship addict. Getting into one after another people that were abusive to me or that took advantage. And I'm right now speaking about romantic relationships, where there was always drama, there was always tumult. I was always running after them. I was always carrying, I was always begging them, please don't leave me. Even though I maybe didn't want to be. I have like a thing there. Anyways. Okay. But I didn't want to be on my own. And so I was always trying to focus all my attention on that outward person at whatever phase of the relationship. And then at the same time, inwardly also having a crush on another and feeling that draw and wanting that to make me feel like that euphoric sense that maybe you felt somebody that's healthier would feel when they're in junior high, that first excitement of having that crush. But I was doing it throughout life as an escape from my own self, my own issues. So at one point I was being codependent and sort of allowing myself to be in these abusive situations and be their rescuer and caretaker and try to, do what I can to put all my focus on them. And then also I was putting my focus on a new person that made me feel good and gave me that positive attraction. A lot of times that positive attraction would come in, and then I'd be like, that person would eventually going to become something that was toxic in one way or another. So, in about 2003, when I graduated high school, college, I'm not that young, college, I want to point this out. I had about a year of my life that was pretty magical. I had a bunch of friends. We hung out at a coffee shop. That's how I got the term CafeGirl, and that's like the name of the business, CafeGirl Thriving Artists, LLC, all that good stuff. So I just want to pinpoint that as like a time in my life that was very magical, and I had a lot of friends. It was just a very magical, treasured time. We were young, but we were old enough to be independent, and it was just wonderful. Then, around that same time, I fell into fundamentalist Christianity, and at the time I wouldn't say it was fundamentalism. It would be more evangelism. I think they both have two different meanings separately. Just if you look at the meaning, you say like evangelism, it is to share the good news, and which can be anything in a sense. I mean, it is for Jesus, but I think anyone can share good news about anything. So it's kind of, you can look, if you just look at the meaning. And then you have fundamentalism, which is that like set of rigor, structure that you have to abide by. And lately they're merging into one. So when somebody says evangelistic Christian, during their speaking, it's going to be fundamentalism, which is very sad. And I don't think Jesus himself would have anything, like he wouldn't agree to that at all. So I fell into that. I made that choice. Why did I make that choice? Because Christianity in that sense was another, especially in the early years and a little bit throughout, there was a means of escape, and there was a means of that euphoric sense of having someone outside of myself, God, or even the church, that it was euphoria. We were happy. We were high on this God, this Holy Spirit kind of thing, and I wasn't looking at myself until I had to. 2006, I had my first real breakdown. Now, it's important to note that all through my life, I've always had emotional disturbances, and that I am a person that throughout life has developed complex post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as having bipolar. And so it hadn't really been looked at because of my propensity to kind of just keep moving forward and not look back, and then have all this looking for the next high, the next drug. My lights just got, I don't know. So Christianity in its early days, and I think even throughout until I left, was looking for that high, that distraction. Now, I'm not trying to say that having faith in something or having spirituality is in itself a drug. No, I'm not saying that. It was for me, and I think for a lot of people, it can be. Like anything can be a drug. I still consider myself a spiritual person, but I am learning to kind of, I don't lose myself in it as a means to distract from. I think that personal recovery is a spiritual journey, at least for me. Okay. Now, the one thing to note about my being a fundamentalist Christian is that throughout it was starting to get toxic, and I didn't necessarily want to see it until I no longer could. And part of the reason I no longer could is because from about 2008 to 2010, I was in intense recovery programs, whether that was Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christian-based 12-step program, or, one-on-one therapy, group therapy, support groups, all that thing. And I started being able to take those first steps towards looking at myself and towards healing. And so I was able to see Christianity for what it was. But in those early bumpy days when things were starting to kind of reveal themselves to me in the sense of, okay, example, don't read any of their books. Don't read books that are out in the world, secular books. Read the Bible, or books that we decree to be acceptable. So that's the pastors from the church, from the pulpit to the parishioners. Purity culture in itself is very toxic. telling people that because they have impure thoughts, or they've had sex before marriage, or they dress a certain way, that they are not holy, and that they are, they're going to go to hell, and all that. It's so damning to a person's psyche. It's so damning to their love of their body. Even just telling them that there's no such thing as self-esteem. It's God-esteem. So don't even look at yourself. Put yourself last. So, I didn't want to see them. I was always trying to get that high back. And so I think that is relationship addiction, in a sense, is always seeking that high, like any addiction. And no matter, as the high wears off sooner, looking in again and again and again and again and again. Okay. And obsessiveness and compulsion is a part of that. So if the person fades away, the object of crush or love or infatuation kind of fades away, like constantly going after them, obsessing over them, trying to get them back, that's part of it as well. So then, I got married, and that was abusive and toxic, and that was divorcing him, kicking him out of my life, was the first step towards realizing the grandiosity of the abuse that I'd experienced, and the surviving and then thriving. And it's been a journey since 2013 of deconstructing from fundamentalism, healing from the abuse of past boyfriends and husband and bosses and friends, and just like stepping back, not allowing that, putting up boundaries, saying no, has been a journey. And so that being said, it has led me, all of that has led me to this degree of being able to love myself fully and completely, and to be okay with being by myself and comfortable in my own skin. I want to point out this right here. This is something that came into my mind a couple months, maybe it was like last fall, and it's in response to the purity culture and the toxicity. The purity culture, they used to say that every time you give your heart away to a person, it, especially sexually, it tears a little piece off, so your heart is just completely destroyed, right? And it's just like there's nothing left to give. That's not true. I've not found that to be true. Because the more I love and the more I give my heart, even in those times where it was a toxic relationship addict situation, I always love the person. So my ex-husband, I send love back to him because I love him. It's always there. He taught me a lesson. He was there in my life, in that season of my life, to help me overcome and to get better and to break that chain. The same as all the Christians I knew, and the pastors and the pastors' wives, they taught me a valuable lesson. I love them to this day, and I forgive them, and I hope they can forgive me. And I just send love into their lives, that they can just find that freedom that I have in whatever way that is. So this was the idea that all this stuff has gone into my life, all this different, as I've grown and as I've given my heart out, all this stuff has become part of my heart, and it's quite beautiful. And even though there may be some rips and tears around it, my heart has grown because of the lessons I've learned from loving others and giving my heart. So now I want to go into the other idea, other part of me, which is polyamory. Now I want to say right now that relationship addiction or codependency is a dysfunction that anyone, whether they're monogamous, asexual, I don't know how that would, whatever, pansexual, or polyamorous, can have. That's a dysfunction. Polyamory is a way of life. I will look that up now. Let's go to trusty Google. Polyamory. Polyamory, or consensual non-monogamy, is the practice of having multiple intimate relationships, whether sexual or just romantic, with the full knowledge and consent of all parties involved. Polyamory is generally not gender specific. Anyone can have multiple partners of any gender. I think it's really important that they say not gender specific, because I think it's very important to note that this is not polygamy. This is not, where a man has multiple wives. It's quite different than that. And it's a lot more ethical. I like the term ethical polyamory. I also personally like polyamory better than non-monogamy, because polyamory is many loves or multiple loves, and non-monogamy is just kind of, I'm non-monogamous, I'm not monogamous. For me, it's a personal thing. Polyamory. So I think I know now that I've always had this propensity towards polyamory. And like I said in the beginning of this, every time since I was about 11 or 12, when I first started having attractions to guys, for me, opposite sex, I always had at least two that I had crushed on. I can think of two early on, like 8th grade, that I had two crushes on. And that was like people I knew in the summertime. And then in my own school, there was other people that I had crushes on. And you think, well, that's normal in middle school to have crushes on, others. And then at the same time, like you're always going to have attractions to people, even if you're with one person. You don't have to do anything. It's just there, right? Okay, I agree with that, and that's true. I believe now, after all my studies, that relationships are fluid and they change and grow over time. Just because I'm polyamorous doesn't necessarily mean that I can't be committed in a relationship. Right now, my relationship is open. I'm a hinge partner, I guess you could say, give or take. And it's, but that doesn't necessarily mean that may close back up or may shift or something may change. It's just relationships are fluid, as is the heart, as in life. So all my life I've had that. I mean, I can, but when I was like solid in a relationship, I was committed. My earliest actual solid relationships, I had 2 in high school. They only lasted for like 3 months and then they broke up, which is kind of typical. So it wasn't really later until my relationships started getting longer, a couple years, 2 years, 3 years, and such, that I started to have this issue of having another person I was attracted to or wanted to be with, or think that was, quote, my soulmate. I don't believe that we have one soulmate in life. I think that we have multiple people that come into our life, and that could be a friend or a lover or whatever that comes into our life and brings something into our hearts, and we connect with, is something that wasn't a part of ourselves, that wasn't there before we finally saw them again. And they teach us, and then maybe they move on and they teach us certain things at certain times of our life. There's seasons of times with each soulmate, and then they may come back or they may go away. Okay. Let's see, what else was I going to say? So I always knew that, and yet being part of the Fundamentalist Christianity and having this mindset of, and even our society that looks at anything that is not monogamy as wrong, it's even in the quote woke culture and the advances in acceptance that we've had. I still think that it is not as acceptable to be polyamorous. It's a big thing to come out and be open. Okay. So I started to really allow myself to admit my propensity towards polyamory, and I believe 2018, when after I'd been with, so I've been with the person I'm living with for almost 10 years, and that was oh my gosh, minus COVID, that was 3 years ago. Yeah, and so we would 7 years, I think. And so knowing that, a person came back into my life from my days at the coffee shop that I'd always been attracted to. I'd always had a longing for. And we were able to come together. And suddenly here I am in this situation with this person that I have all this magical feelings for, definitely in the throes of new relationship energy, or what we call new NRE, and limerence. I'm going to look those up. Okay, so NRE. So new relationship energy is a strong emotional, physical, and sexual response you have towards someone when you are in a new relationship with them. It starts from initial attraction and can last from anywhere from 3 months to a year. Okay, and then I'm going to look up limerence. The state of being infatuated or obsessed with another person, typically experienced involuntarily and characterized by strong desire for reciprocation of one's feelings, but not primarily for sexual relationships. Okay, so I read those different things. New NRE is not necessarily bad in itself. I think NRE could kind of become limerence. It has for me in 2019. I could look back on that and see that discussion. Limerence I see is that sort of relationship addictive place. And NRE is infatuation. It's just another word for that. And I don't think infatuation is bad on its own. It's a phase. It's a phase of every relationship. And friendship, you can have a NRE for a friend. You can have an NRE for a new book or a new TV show or a project you're working on. You know, it's a delicate balance, because it can either slip into that limerence or relationship addict sense, and it happened to me. So in 2019, I did some things in my throes of NRE and limerence that weren't healthy and were hurtful to the person that I've been living with, that I love very much since 2000. I've been with him since 2013. And I want to point out that it was once again that state of, there was things in my relationship with him that I wasn't happy, and instead of actually dealing with it and sitting down with him, I didn't have the tools to talk to him and to actually have these meetings, these discussions, however they would. I wanted it to be that fairy tale that I'd been raised with and not be hard. And I was better at looking at myself, but I was still not trained in having an intentional relationship, a healthy intentional relationship. And so instead I kind of kept running, and yes, I have this propensity towards multi-love, but I wasn't going into that other relationship with a healthier mindset, with intentionalism. Is that a word? Intentionally. I was just using an escape. So it's a real balance, and it's discussion, and really, for me, the two people that I love now, the two men, seeing them and acknowledging them as humans and as people that I am coming together, soulmates right now in this moment. And then taking care of myself, not allowing myself to run to them, but really just spending time with myself in therapy, and creative projects, and just even learning to enjoy, to play, to have that sense of play and wonder. I look at the child I nanny for, and the thing that she finds curious about life, that are some of the things that we adults take for granted or we dislike. I mean, and a child will find it so fascinating that we have to go to work, and we have to make money, and we have to pay bills. And so if you look at it from that framework and have that curiosity, then I can start to have a curiosity about myself. Like, what do I like to do for me? As I'm coming to a close, I think that the ultimate idea of love and Valentine's Day should first start from the self-love, and that's been the journey lifelong for me. And everybody, fall in love with yourself before you can fall in love with another person. That's partially true because any relationship, whether it's you by yourself, you and yourself, or you with another person or people, it takes work. It's just sitting down and going through the nitty-gritty, and it's not always going to be fairy tales. There's going to be the times when you clean the toilet bowl, or hold their hair when they vomit, or bring them medicine or chicken soup or whatever it is. You just have to continually work on yourself and work with them and work to find that wholeness within in order to see them and not look at them as that drug. So, and that is, I think, the true path and the true journey towards finally saying within yourself, I live happily ever after. And that's a continuous journey. I want to add that Valentine's Day is not, I don't think Valentine's Day should be looked at as here's the roses, here's the chocolate, you are my lover, you are my boyfriend, you are my girlfriend, you are my husband, you are my wife. It's self-love. You can give yourself those flowers. You can give yourself that love. You should. We all should. Celebrate the friendships you have in your life. And that goes for whether you are married or you're in a partnership of any degree. You still have friends that deserve to know that you love them and that they matter. And that's something that I've been really trying to, as I'm going through this polyamorous journey and looking at love and relationship addiction and healing from that, is really investing in those friendships that are positive and have been, and pouring into them and taking that time to give to them and uplift them and feeling that they do the same thing for me. And that's amazing. So I give that to you. It's not just, I'm going to buy a Valentine's present for my cat because I love her. And that's what it's all about. It's love. And I think that we need to take that time. We should be doing it every day, but it is special that we take a day in 1 month of a year that we just sit and reflect on love and the greatness of it. And that pretty much, as the Beatles said, love is all you need.